Hi, I'm Ted Haftagaber, founder and producer of Live Talks Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us. Since we started over a decade ago, we have brought you hundreds of conversations with storytellers, writers, actors, musicians, humorists, chefs, and thought leaders in business and science. You can watch and hear most of these in our YouTube channel and our podcast. For details, visit livetalksla.org. And now, here's the show you've tuned in to see.
I should start out by saying that I'm not only a journalist, but I've been a longtime Tom Selleck fan, having seen every episode of Magnum, every episode of Blue Bloods, having interviewed him for Mr. Baseball and Three Men and a Baby, at least those two. So I feel like I have this history. And reading this book, Tom, was so much fun because it brought back a lot of my memories. Your memories are 300 and something pages long of things that mattered to you.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't really thought about writing a book, and when I did, I just didn't know quite what I was going to write it about. So, but I wanted to do it about the work and the fact that I had an accidental career, that it was pure serendipity that I happened to grow up in the city where the business is, and a whole bunch of stuff happened accidentally, which was a blessing for me, and I've been very fortunate all along the way for those little accidents to happen that made things work.
That's how you got the title of the book, You Never Know, because you never know. But how did you choose this photo? It's a great picture.
I didn't pick it out. The publisher picked it out, and I said, I love that picture. I mean, it looks like I maybe took it on the volleyball court at Outrigger Canoe Club. It's from the right era for the book, and I didn't tell you, my original title for the book was Don't Know Where I'm Going, but There's No Use Being Late. And the publisher said, that's too long. So we settled with You Never Know.
You picked some great pictures that are inside the book. Did you not ever have an awkward phase like most of us?
My whole life was an awkward phase. I was very shy.
Yeah?
I had a big brother, and even as I grew up, I didn't feel, I'm 6'4", but I don't feel like I'm very tall, because my brothers are 6'7". And
oh, the runs of the litter.
Yeah, no, I had plenty of awkward stages. I talk about a few of them in the book. Look, it's tough growing up, and it's tough, especially when you start to do leads in parts that are a little bit bigger than life, and you don't consider yourself really bigger than life. You just wonder if you can fool them.
Anybody who reads your book will see that on the page you grew up really in a wonderful family with wonderful parents.
Yeah.
You were really lucky as a kid to have that family.
Yeah, I could go into analysis for 20 years and not blame my parents for anything. Look, they seem to walk their talk, and they seem to be aware that they were raising their kids to be self-sufficient grown-ups and part of the next generation, and they took on that responsibility. And I don't know, when I screwed up, which was quite often, I don't know how they did this, but I would always feel worse that I disappointed them than the punishment, which I was going to get, that came with it. And that stayed with me.
Your siblings have never treated you like a star in the family.
No.
You're just Tom.
It was very grounding. Look, I was 35 when I got Magnum, so I was pretty ordinary when I was around the house. When I did achieve some success, they kept me in line.
I think that's good.
And my parents, Magnum got crazy. It was wildly successful. And my parents would be interviewed, and you may have interviewed my mom, I don't know. But they would always say, they said, "What's Tom like?" And they said, "Look, we have 4 children, and we love them all equally." And that was the first sentence out of their mouth all the time.
I don't think red carpets are your favorite place to be in the world of showbiz, but I will tell you that Jilly, your wife,
Yes.
was so good whenever she appeared on a red carpet. I loved talking to her. She was this burst of positive energy who always had a great line, who made, I think, the cut of every finished piece that I ever wrote when she was there, because what she said couldn't be denied.
Yeah, and you guys got along great. And I'm thrilled George is doing this. George is one of the few interviewers that probably talk to Jilly more than me. And because most of the interviews are elbowing Jilly out of the way to ask me some stupid question like, "Who are you wearing?"
I
George
try never
didn't
to
do
ask that. But Jilly, I think, was a great comedic balance for you on that carpet because she lightened it up.
Jilly does light up the day, every day. She has this remarkable energy, kind of joie de vivre. I don't speak French very well, but
We know what you mean.
And she's never lost that, and it's, I always want to think about things, so it's a great mix for us out at the ranch. It's never dull.
When you are writing your book, you choose your words, I think, pretty wisely, and you stay being, I want to say classy is a good word to describe the way you write, because it comes off as kind, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, and I'm wondering, is that a value that you had as a teenager, one of those things mom and dad taught you? And are you carrying those same values today as you did when you were 15?
My mom and dad taught me so much, but I didn't have a pamphlet on how to grow up. Actually, writing the book, I think, helped me articulate some of the things that had really influenced me more than I ever realized, that I got largely from family and life and coaches and sports and all. So memoirs are hard. I don't consider myself a writer, certainly not a writer of books, and I would write. Usually, I couldn't write when I was doing Blue Bloods. I just don't work that way. So I commute from LA to New York. When I was in LA, I would write the book, and I would go up in my little office and write and about personal stuff, about all sorts of things, some emotional, some very joyous. And I would write, but then I would go down for dinner, and I was always read to Jilly and Hannah if she was home. And I didn't really get emotional writing it, but when I read it out loud to them before dinner, I often got emotional. And not about necessarily a deeply emotional moment or anything else. Just I don't know. It was, memoirs are hard.
Did Jilly ever say, "Get rid of that, Tom. No, that's not a good
Actually,
page"?
she would if it stunk. But she didn't say that very often.
That's good.
I don't think she ever said that.
You know, in movies, I'll interview directors and they'll...
She's very clever. She may have made me think that it was great, but it wasn't really great, but her suggestions were going to help it.
Got it. In movies today, I'll interview directors and they'll say they're going to have something in a director's cut that comes out later on DVD. It's a new way for them to make money, I think. But I wonder if there are lots of pages that would be a director's cut version of your book somewhere. Did you leave anything out that was originally in?
Out of it that I didn't think needed to be out of it. I worked very hard on it. I kind of knew everything by heart. I should point out that I couldn't have done the book without Ellis Hennigan. Ellis was a great partner, but I would write, and then I would talk to Ellis, and we would go back and forth. But it was important to me that I wrote this. And I wrote it with a legal pad and a pen because I'm kind of computer illiterate. So anyway, what'd you ask me?
Is there something that you would like to share with the audience that is not in the book, but you'd like them to know?
Well, there's a lot of stuff I don't want to share with the audience. Not in
Fair
the
enough.
book. I tried to be real honest. You know, you get on this train we go on in success, and you do talk shows, and they do pre-interviews, and they say, well, can't you spice that story up a little bit and make it funnier? And you do that, and suddenly it's not truthful anymore. Yeah. And I had to many times just stop myself. I realized I started saying, because it was a better story when I signed a contract at 20th Century Fox, it was for only $35 a week. Well, that's ridiculous. But that had become the story. And so I came to grips with a lot of that stuff and just talked to myself and said, just be honest and straighten some of these things out, because they kind of grow, and there's this kind of weird revisionist history out there that has nothing to do with me waiting till I was 35 to be successful.
I'll share a story now that I don't know that I've shared since it happened, maybe, but it was many years ago, and I was heading to Redondo Beach, I think it was, and
where?
You were doing Boston Legal. Was that in Manhattan
Yeah.
Beach? And I was going to talk to Tom. I'd gotten permission. I get to the studio, and they won't let me talk to him, and they won't let me on the set, and they won't let me in the studio. And I didn't know what's going on here. So I talked to your assistant, and because they wouldn't let me come to him, Tom came to my house to do the interview. It was the classiest thing that has ever happened in my career, that you would care that much.
I have no idea why I would do such a thing.
But it was so nice to just keep a commitment that you didn't have to keep, and you did, and it mattered to me.
That's important stuff, keeping commitments, giving your word. I haven't been perfect, but those things matter. Nowadays, I don't know, maybe they're considered a little old-fashioned. I frankly don't care. I think you got to look at yourself in the mirror, and you can kid yourself and say, well, yeah, I lied and stuff, but it was for a very good reason. Or otherwise I wouldn't have done it. But few of us are as good as we think we are, and none of us are as good as we can be. So it's important to look yourself in the mirror, know when you screwed up, because we all do, and hold yourself accountable.
Well, I thank you
not
for
somebody else.
I'm going to say something else about your personal life not really your personal life, your publicist life. Right now with you is a lady named Annette Wolfe, who is one of the most professional, kind publicists in Hollywood, period.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite one in town. Before that, you had a lady named Esme Chandley,
Yeah.
who you loved and adored and write about her in your book. And there was a time where I saw you on a press line, and I swear to God, you were walking Esme. She wasn't walking you. You kept her. She was in your world until she was, in her 80s?
Until she decided she was going to hang it up, which was quite a long time. Esme, when I was under contract to Fox, she did this for Sam, too, Sam Elliott. She did stuff for us for free because we couldn't afford it. And obviously she was betting on the future, and she's a lovely woman, and
Yep.
she's the one who really exploited the Mae West thing when I had this, I was in this picture of Myra Breckenridge for a cup of coffee. And
You were young stud number 4.
but Esme, it got mentioned in an article. She said, look, in the same sentence she mentioned you and Cary Grant. And I said, well, I'm not Cary Grant. She said, she always called me Dolly. And she said, well, no, Dolly, you got a long way to go, but the public doesn't know that.
But when you were walking basically with her, because she was walking a little slower in those days, you had such love in your eyes and a smile for her that it was also lovely to see that you had this partnership that doesn't often exist.
Yeah, I mean, I'd roll my eyes a lot when she made me do something I didn't want to do.
Like go to the Golden Globes.
Esme went back to, there's a famous picture at MGM where all those stars had lunch together. Every movie star you can think of. Well, that's where Esme got her start. She was at MGM in those days, so she knew her stuff.
Now let's get a little silly. There was a time where you did a commercial for Valley of the Dolls where you were near naked with Barbara Parkins.
Yes.
Did you ever see her after that time?
I wish I had. Well, Barbara, it was my first job at Fox, and I'd never done anything, and I was now under contract, and they said, go over, you're supposed to do this publicity photo for the movie Valley of the Dolls with Barbara Parkins. So I go over there, and it turns out, she had, her love interest was an actor, Paul Burke, who couldn't be there. So I was a stand-in for Paul Burke. Because they were only going to shoot over my shoulder. But it was one of those dramatic posters, and the photographer said, look, of course you'll both have to be naked. She will have a sheet. And I did say, can I keep my shorts on? And he said, yes, if you must. But yeah, and Barbara wasn't there. She was like an hour and a half late. And this is not a story on Barbara Parkins. She didn't even know I was in the room. But what happened was she was late. I was sitting around waiting, wondering what this was going to be like. And finally she breezes in and says, where's the body? She didn't know I was there. She wasn't being mean. So yeah, it would have been fun to bring that up to her. But I ended up holding up a sheet and trying to get just the right amount of exposure of her left breast in the poster. And she was very gracious to me and tried to relax me because I think I was scared to death.
I bring her up because it just is the beginning of a long list of people you worked with, and maybe not even knowing some of those people were going to be big. You did this Safeguard commercial with Patty Deutsch, who I remember mostly from Match Game, and Terry Garr. You did a Dubonnet commercial with Farrah Fawcett.
Safeguard soap commercial was, Patty Deutsch was in it, and Terry Garr and Penny Marshall. And they all smelled me. They would, I was so fresh and clean from Safeguard soap that they would all go, oh, and poor Terry had the worst line of all. She said, oh, he always smells so fresh and clean, just the way a man should smell. It was kind of a miserable job. I got to wear a great chalk stripe gray flannel suit, and I used to sell clothes, so that was, and they gave me the suit. But all those commercials, all the beer commercials, all of them, you had to do things ecstatically. So if you're doing Safeguard soap, you do your inevitable shower scene, and you have to shower ecstatically, rubbing Safeguard soap all over your body. But if you do that for 4 or 5 hours, you don't have any skin left on your sensitive areas, and that was a problem. But I got to keep the suit.
Did you have a favorite commercial?
I don't know. I have a favorite commercial. I did 3 close-up toothpaste commercials, and they paid well. So they're
those are your
some
favorites.
Of my favorites. But yeah, I had close-up teeth, and the guy told me that after I worked in the first commercial. We think you have close-up teeth. Evidently, your dental work depends on which toothpaste you use.
Sure.
And it was the same with beer. I did a Schlitz beer commercial with Sherry Lansing.
Oh, wow.
Who ended up running a studio. And all those people that you come across, I mean, Fox didn't have a great big Universal tour thing, but they had little personal tours, and those were being run by a young guy named Mike Ovitz. And Mike Ovitz ended up running the whole business in Disney, and you know more than I do about his resume, but yeah, it was fun coming across all those people.
In your book, you write about Christina Ferrara, who became a big talk show host in LA.
Well, Christina Ferrara was in the contract program. I call her Cindy. But yeah, she was great. And she was my pal.
And Lionel Wagner?
She was 17 and I was like 23, and she was light years ahead of me.
Lionel Wagner, Carol Burnett Show, Linda Dano, one of the best soap actresses ever, Sam Elliott, your good friend. You all came up together.
Yeah, and I remember my favorite commercial maybe. This is it. I was going to do this Gallo wine Dubonnet aperitif commercial, and so I go to the set. I got the job, and I go to meet my leading lady. I said, "Come on, we'll introduce you," and it was her. There was a Noxzema commercial going around the air where Joe Namath shaves and then a woman caresses his face, and the her was Farrah Fawcett. So I got paid to flirt with Farrah Fawcett for 2 days. That was a good gig. And she always remembered every time we'd bump into each other. Same with Sherry Lansing.
Who did you love bumping into the most in show business?
Farrah's one of them. Probably in retrospect, it might have been Jim Garner, because he ended up being a mentor of mine. And I just loved the guy, and he taught me so much. It was right before Magnum, but bumping into him was, I was a teenager, and I was golfing at this par 3 course, and I hit an errant 9-iron, which was a common practice for me, and it goes flying through the air, and it goes way off mark towards another tee where there's 3 people standing, ready to hit. And one of them was Jim Garner. And I thought, I'm going to kill Magnum. I mean, not Maverick. And I was just shocked, and I was trying to will the ball not to go over there, but it did. And it landed right at their feet, and I got this big glare from big Jim Garner.
But you would later get invited back to do another episode of the Rockford Files, so you were well liked over there.
Well, Garner was even more pivotal than that. There was, we became pretty close, pretty quick, and he loved the Rockford Files I did, playing a perfect detective that was his nemesis, called Lance White. The show was called White on White and Nearly Perfect. Rockford wasn't perfect, and anyway, I was sitting with him after the second Rockford I did in his, he had a souped up van, and it was against all union rules and everything, but we were on a distant location and he drove me back. That's a no-no. And then we just sat there waiting for the crew, and he said, "What's wrong with you?" And no, I was sitting there very quiet, and I said nothing, and he said, "No, come on." And I said, "Well, this studio, Universal, has assigned a show to me, and on a contract that's expired, and they're saying I have to do it." And it was a show called Magnum. Not the Magnum you're thinking about. It was the early version of it, and basically he obviously gave me a piece of advice that changed my life. I mean, he said, "Do you want it?" He said, "Do you want to do it?" I said, "No, I hate it." And he said, "Well, I'm not one to give advice." Jim was pretty, you know, he wasn't a braggart or anything else. He said, "I'm not one to give advice, but I can tell you this. If you don't have any power, you've done a bunch of unsold pilots and a couple episodes of TV, you don't have any power, but if the studio wants you, and it appears that they do, you will never have more power than you do right now." And he said, "I'm not going to tell you what to do, but for what it's worth." And I said no to Universal right after that.
And there was something else going on at that same time.
A year later there was, what do you, oh, you, I know.
It might be a movie that you were unable to do.
Yeah, there was a movie that kind of came along. Finally, we straightened out the Magnum problem after about a year, and I did the pilot. Don Belisario wrote a great 2-hour pilot, but the show hadn't sold, and I got an interview with Steven Spielberg and George Lucas for Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I didn't know what it was. I said, "Well, you know, it's probably a long shot, whatever it is, but I'd love to meet those two guys. I'm a big fan." So I went on the interview, and I was kind of the last guy in town that they had seen. My agent, Betty McCart, told me that, and so I go meet with them, and I thought that was really nice. I got to meet Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, but you know, you got Magnum, and anyway, I go home, and they said, they want you to screen test for Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I said, "Okay, well, give me the test pages, and I'll work on it." And they said, "They're not giving out any test scene pages." I said, "Well, can I see the script?" So she said, "Nobody has seen the script." So they said, "Tell Tom not to worry. He'll have plenty of time when he gets there." And I went and did a screen test. The screen tests, they were so secretive that it was done in the lobby of Stephen and George's office. They were keeping this movie a secret. And I did pretty good. I didn't test with Karen Allen, I tested with Sean Young, a really good actress, and young actress. And I didn't think much of it. Stephen was great. He had a way of getting rid of the nerves and just thinking about the work. And it really helped me. And I thought, well, that was nice. I got a call, and Betty said they want to meet with you again, George and Stephen. And I said, well, what about this time? She said, they won't say. So I went to their office, and they said, we want you to play Indiana Jones. And at that point, Stephen said, here's the script. And he said, go down the hall to my office and read the script and let us know what you think. It's written by Lawrence Kasdan, really great writer. And so I went down the hall. They were so secretive, scripts have page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, these scripts all had a serial number on each one. They wanted to keep track of all of them. So I go and read it, and I got to about page 8, where the boulder's rolling down the hill. And I went, oh shit, this is really good. So I went back and told them I loved it, and I said, but I have to tell you, I have this series possibility. And they said, it has always been our experience that actors don't tell us that at a time like this. I said, I don't know what else I could do. And they said, we're not worried. We can work it out. We got cards to play at Universal, because CBS wanted their movies, so it was really a CBS decision that went on for about 6 weeks. And CBS ended up saying no. But Magnum hadn't sold yet. So it was quite an interesting, it's part of the Magnum saga, as I called it in the book. It was a long road. But look, I always say this, and it's important I say it. It's Harrison Ford's role. I mean, he's indelible in the part. He wasn't a second choice. He was another choice. Here's what it did for me. I'm a better actor as I get more confident. If I do a rehearsal for a scene, I work rather small, and with each rehearsal, I grow the part. A lot of actors are completely the opposite. So basically, a lot of what I talk about in the book is things that gave me the confidence to know I could do this stuff, that I was enough. And regardless of what happened with Raiders, what Stephen and George did was tell me kind of in spades, I was enough. And that was something that I always was able to keep in my hip pocket for the rest. If Stephen and George thought I was enough, I can do this stuff.
That's great.
That was a big deal.
Did you ever have a moment at an award show somewhere where you got to have a conversation with Harrison Ford about any of this?
I've talked to Harrison a couple times. He's been really gracious. He's kind of sick of hearing about it, but he's very well aware. He's very well aware of the story and everything. We have the same attorney Skip Britton had, and I said, I don't want to make I'm doing this book, Skip, and I don't want Harrison to feel like it's second choice. He said, Harrison knows he was a second choice, Tom. it's no big deal now. I heard you got hurt on the set one time, got injured, and he said, I don't know whether I can finish the picture. Maybe I ought to call Tom Selleck. That was a nice compliment.
But instead of that, you went on to 8 seasons of Magnum to great success in huge audiences. Go ahead, I heard someone applauding. And you taught me little tidbits along the way in reading this, for instance. I had no idea that CBS wanted to stay in Hawaii. So when Hawaii Five-0 went off the air, Jack Lord really beautifully passed the torch to you and set the rules of the road in motion.
Jack was kind of a formal man, and it was his island, pretty much. And in the little Diamond Head Studios where it was, he asked me to come over, and he kind of showed me the ropes. And one of the things he said, be sure your producer knows you need to do a Hawaiian blessing before your first day of shooting. These are things you didn't really do in LA. And then he takes me down and he points out they were all little bungalow type buildings. And he points out this one, he said, that's my office. I said, oh, I've never had an office. He said, well, you're gonna need one and you could have mine. And he didn't have to do that. He could have stayed there forever, haunting us.
Did he ever want to guest on Magnum?
No. He lived at the Kahala condos down the way, and no, he never visited the set.
I bet he watched.
I think he probably watched. I think he had this, like I say, he was a very proper, formal guy, and I don't think he thought that would be proper to show up.
I get it.
On our set. But it was a very gracious thing, and it was noticed.
You had a lot of great guest stars over the years. I know Carol Burnett was one of your favorites. Frank Sinatra, as you read the chapters about him doing your show, I started to think to myself, at one point you just had to say, whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen, and it's gonna be good.
Well, that's kind of what working with Frank's like. Whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. Larry Manetti knew him better than I did. I had met Frank Sinatra by then, but Larry knew him much better, and Larry comes to me and says, Frank wants to do the show. And I said, Frank who? He said, Frank Sinatra. And he said, but you gotta call him, because he wants to be asked. I gotta call him. I think Charles Johnson was in the office when I called him. Charles might be out there somewhere, along with Jilly and some other, and Ann, his wife. I think he was and Larry was in the room, and I call him up and I say, Frank, you want to do our show? I mean, I'm an actor. I mean, yeah, I was kind of producing the show partly, thanks to Charles running the place, and I said, you want to do the show? He said, yeah, I want to do your show. I love your show. And I said, well, look, you know, a television show, your scripts are, you're hand to mouth. You don't have the whole season all lined up and all. So I said, Frank, that means we're going to have to write a script for you. So what do you want to do? And he said, oh, I don't care as long as I get to beat somebody up. That's what he said. And then he said, I tell you what, I won't even charge you. You just pay my expenses, which Universal was jumping up and down about. They thought, God, that's great. What a gesture. What a gesture. Till they got the bill. Because his expenses were something like $250,000. But it was a real treat. And Frank had some problems. We didn't know whether he was going to show up because he was in the hospital with colitis. And we thought, what are we going to do? And we called him up, and he said, don't worry, I'll be there. And he showed up, which, I mean, he got out of the hospital and showed up. It was a real act of loyalty. And the only trouble is he wanted to get back to the hospital, and we had him for 7 days, which we needed, because Frank likes to improvise. And he says, I'm gonna go back, I'm only gonna give you 6 days, that's it. And that's what he would do, that's it. Or, you know, he'd screw up in a take, and he said, no, I did it perfect, next, and just walk away. He had the patience of a saloon singer. And,
Turned out to be his final role, right?
Yeah,
his last
it was
role.
his last acting role.
Weren't the ratings particularly good for that episode?
I think so. We were on the cover of TV Guide, Frank and I. That was pretty neat. And Jilly and I went to his funeral service years later, and everybody was in this little Catholic church in Beverly Hills, and I mean everybody. And the Archbishop spoke all sorts of things, and then there was a big lull in the church, but like an unplanned lull, it was just totally quiet. And I thought, something screwed up in the program, you know. And then all of a sudden, in that beautiful church, with everybody sitting there, all his friends and family, came over the loudspeaker, Frank singing, "Put Your Dreams Away." And there wasn't a dry eye in the house.
So you have Frank Sinatra on one end, and then let's go to Carol for a moment. Because Carol can make anybody laugh.
Yes.
And she gets a different kind of opportunity on Magnum, right?
Yeah, well, I knew Carol by then. When I was doing Young and Restless, our stage was across the hall at CBS and I used to sneak over and watch Carol rehearse. So I told her that story, and we were both going through a divorce, and I thought maybe she'd like to go to the Academy Awards, because I know we're both presenting. And so I took her to the Academy Awards. Esme set it up. She said, I talked to Carol, and she's thrilled. Let's do it. So I knew her, but I'd never worked with her. So now she comes on the set, and it's Carol Burnett. And we were locked in a bank vault together, which was really fun. And at a certain point in the bank vault, we're trying to get out, and we push the wrong button, and the sprinklers go on. And I can tell you, and every actor in this world, they haven't lived till you have Carol Burnett climbing on top of you and wrapping her legs around your shoulders and holding onto your head. It was, and she just did it. It was really fun.
I don't want to give all the Magnum secrets away that are in the book, but I'll ask this one Magnum question. You had an idea for what you wanted this show to be.
Yes.
And you fought for it as long as you needed to fight for it. And by the time it was over, you knew you had achieved the meaning of Magnum for the audience and for the country, after you started to get honors for it.
It was Don and I at the beginning. The show, the 2-hour pilot, had these flashbacks to Vietnam, and it was very much a part of who the character was. And Vietnam didn't haunt him, but it informed him. His past informed his present. And CBS says, we love the pilot, now that we've picked you up, but Vietnam has to go. Vietnam is death. Because everybody was running around in those days in some maladjusted way, running around the jungle and things. And Don and I said no. And it was a big fight. You get a little of that, who the hell do you think you are? We just picked up and shook. But Vietnam stayed. It became one of the major themes in the 8 years of Magnum. So basically at the end of the show, I think Charles called me, Charles Johnson, and said, the Smithsonian wants your hat and your Hawaiian shirt and the ring you wear. And I thought that was neat. Maybe I'll be next to Archie Bunker's chair, or Mary Tyler Moore's beret, And I didn't, work, you don't spend the time to reflect on some of this stuff. So we go, I know Charles went, and we go to Washington. And it wasn't until they read the citation that I was just absolutely blown away. They recognized Magnum as the first show to recognize Vietnam veterans in a positive light. And so that long fight was worth it. I think we helped change a lot of attitudes about Vietnam, and I'm certainly proud of that.
Eight seasons of that show, I think 163 episodes?
163. That number, people argue. I say 163.
But it's 163 episodes, whatever it is, it's been with you since the day it went off the air. Magnum really has never left you, and I'm sure every one of these fine folks in this audience has seen episodes of the show or followed it regularly. You don't really go very many days without somebody saying to you something about Magnum, right?
Yeah. A lot of people say, hey, Magnum, still. Different generations say different things to me. Some of them not too complimentary, but some know me from Friends, some know me from Three Men and a Baby, some know me from my Westerns. But Magnum is constant, and it's still there, and kind of immutable, and unspin-offable, if you know what I mean. Well, I never said anything about Magnum P.I. You notice I never call Magnum P.I.? Well, it's a horrible title, and it's the P.I. was added by the studio. Anyway, I never said anything when CBS, in all their wisdom, decided to spin off a new Magnum. Because actors, those jobs are too hard to get. So I didn't want to do anything that hurt the actors' chances, but it's off the air now, so I wasn't thrilled about it.
What would happen if CBS came to you tomorrow with an insane offer to do a 2-hour Magnum movie?
I don't know. I don't know whether you can go
It's
home
10
again.
million.
The only way, if he's, say, mid-70s, I'd like to know where he's at now. But if it's if they want me to try and pretend I'm 40, I can't do that. I'm not sure you can't go home again. In many ways, I miss it. I miss the family we had. I certainly miss John and Roger.
you have another family now on television with Blue Bloods. And what was the original title for Blue Bloods?
Reagan's Law. And again, it's like Magnum P.I. What a stupid title.
But with Blue Bloods, you have, from the moment I first started watching it, I love this moment. And maybe it's because I grew up in an Italian family where every Sunday dinner was around a table.
Yeah.
And we talked. And that felt so familiar to me and real to me. And you've kept that going for 14 seasons because you fought again.
Yeah, well, look, Leonard Goldberg, who basically created the show, and along with Robin and Mitch, but Leonard had this idea. I went to interview, actually they were offering it to me, which was nice. And I said, look, I got some questions. I like this script. It's kind of character-driven, not procedural, but there's this great 8-page scene where the family has dinner and they argue. You know the network's going to cut that down or out and ruin the thing. Leonard said, no, they're not. That's going to be a set piece of the series. And we're going to do that every week. He saw this Norman Rockwell painting of Freedom from Want, I think, which is a family at Thanksgiving dinner, and he thought, what if this family was a family of Irish Catholic cops? And that was Leonard's vision. And it was very difficult, actually. We shot it up in Toronto, even though the show belonged in New York, and the casting was pretty chaotic. Donnie was set, and Len was set, but I think I met Bridget the night before, and Will the day of our first day's work. And our first day's work was family dinner and the pilot. And I was scared to death. So was everybody. I thought they were all okay, and I was just scared, but everybody felt the same way. But it was a good cast with good actors, and the public didn't know that. And if they liked what we did, no matter how nervous we were, the word is thank you. Yeah.
But the dinners were kind of going to go away a little bit, right? Some showrunners came in, and didn't you meet with CBS to say?
Well, it wasn't the dinners. It was the dinners weren't going to go away, but the rest of the show, the character-driven aspect of the show, and I don't know. I've been around. I'd been around a lot by the time Blue Bloods started, and frankly, I looked at the first script. The pilot was their highest testing pilot. I looked at the first script, and it was like a procedural, and they built this, what they called a real-time crime center, and I was going to be standing in front of green screens and giving orders on all the police operations. And I don't do very well on that green screen stuff. They go, you know, you have this big screen, and they go, and the monster's right over there, and that's the mop. Look at the mop and pretend it's the monster. And I don't pretend very well, and I didn't see that as what the commissioner did. So we had a little meeting, and it turned out CBS had brought in a producer who was procedurally oriented, and it was very much kind of like the early days of Magnum. There was this parallel of that it's when they assigned the first Magnum to me that I said no to. And Blue Bloods, I just said, this might be my last go-round, and I'm going to do what I signed on to do. And there was some big risks. I talked to Donnie and Bridget and Will, and I said, look, stay out of this. As long as you agree with me that the show needs to be more character-driven than procedural, then stay out. I've got the juice. And let me see what I can do, because I didn't want them. They got years ahead. So.
Well, I think you have earned the respect by that time of CBS, certainly. They believed in what you said. I'm glad you fought, because it's kept me watching for more than 250 episodes. So thank you.
290 something.
Yeah, it's a lot. So I think Ted has some questions that some of the folks in the audience have, and he's going to ask those.
One of your early credits was playing Jacqueline Smith's boyfriend on an episode of Charlie's Angels. How was that experience, as the show itself had not premiered?
It was neat being Jacqueline Smith's boyfriend, and more importantly, the part was supposed to recur. And I thought, boy, that's great. I'll get, a bunch of shows. Well, Leonard Goldberg fired me, my boss on Blue Bloods. I kid Leonard about that. I don't know whether he fired me, but they fired me. I looked at it as being fired. They said they were going to try and involve the girls with personal lives, and that lasted one show and said it didn't work. So my recurring role disappeared. But Jackie was great, and it was great to see Farrah again.
Joni asks, and her question starts, the mustache.
Yes.
Such an identifiable...
I always expect one.
It's such an identifiable part of you, and frankly, still gorgeous as hell. Ever think of shaving it and maybe leaving it to the Smithsonian?
And maybe what?
Leaving it to the Smithsonian.
I was born without one. And no, I haven't thought of giving it to the Smithsonian, but it's not a bad thought. I've shaved it off several times. My favorite mustache moment was on Conan O'Brien, where I had shaved my mustache off for a movie where I played General Eisenhower, and we talked ahead of time, and so I come out, and he said, your mustache, you shaved it off. He said, well, I've got some terrible news for you. Your mustache was in a terrible crash, and he's in intensive care. And they built this little tiny hospital about this big. And he said, you should go, maybe you can cheer him up. So I go over to this little tiny hospital, and there's my mustache in bed with tubes and everything. And I take the pillow off the bed and smother it. That's my favorite mustache.
That is an awesome story. And did you save that?
What,
The prop?
No, I don't know when. I wish I did. I mean, Conan and I had a lot of fun with my mustache. But it was getting a little old. I would go on talk shows, to promote an episode or whatever, and they go, we got this great idea. See, when you come out, we're going to turn the camera on the audience, and I would finish their sentence. And everybody in the audience is having a mustache. Because they did it about 14 times.
Oh.
Which, then it's not funny at the point. It's just stupid. And it constantly changed. So it's always kind of new and exciting.
Who's the better street cop, Jesse Stone or Frank Reagan?
By the book, Frank Reagan, although I think he had a few things up his sleeve. For results, Jesse Stone. Jesse often did the wrong thing for the right reasons. It was a great character to play, and hopefully maybe we can write another one now.
Oh.
Steve says, we were friends in junior high and high school, and I've always been struck by how similar your roles on Magnum and Blue Bloods are to the Tom I knew.
I'm having trouble hearing because I'm old.
Is it Steve?
Yes, Steve.
Steve.
And we went to high school?
That's what he says.
Steve, what's your last name? Steve Lowe. Hi, Tom. Steve Lowe.
Steve Lowe's here? Hi, Steve. I don't know whether I've seen you since we went off a 125-foot cliff. That's true. Is that true?
Yes.
Is Steve out there?
He is.
Hi, Steve. No, I mean, we were pals.
I think he's asking whether or not you think Magnum and Frank Reagan are similar in some ways.
I think, look, the grand term for it in acting class is your instrument. You use your instrument in every role you do. You find different parts. I think when you get a long-running character like Magnum or a long-running character like Frank Reagan, a lot of you creeps in. I mean, I'm not Frank Reagan and he's not me, and I wasn't Thomas Magnum and he's not me, but as time went on, you're going from your sensibilities, hopefully your loyalty is to the character, not your own personal idiosyncrasies or bents. But yeah, I think it's both. There's a lot of me in both of them, and I don't know. It's hard to figure it all out. When I get it figured out, I'm going to write a book. I'll let you know.
Drew asks, as I understand, the tiger's hat was your addition to the Magnum wardrobe. Did you also provide the awesome shorts?
The shorts were awesome. The Detroit Tiger hat was the Tigers needed a lot of help in 1980, and I was born in Detroit, and they were my first love. And Magnum, I knew, was going to be a ball cap kind of guy coming from the Navy. So that was a choice. The shorts were as normal can be in 1980. People said, well, why'd you wear the shorts? Isn't that exploitive? I said, people in Hawaii wear shorts all the time. So I knew that was part of his wardrobe. I did not know that shorts would transcend into big baggy pajama bottom things, and that my shorts would be trivialized. So what I hear now, in fact, I just heard it earlier tonight, that Esquire said my shorts are really cool. I think Chris Pine said that. Oh. And he's really cool. He's even cooler now that he likes my shorts. But I don't know. I got a lot of short crap, if you know what I mean, for a lot of years. So it's a pleasure to know shorter shorts are coming back. Yes.
And our final question from Stephanie. If you hadn't become an actor, what profession would you most likely have been?
You know, I honestly don't have any idea. I didn't want to be an actor. It wasn't something I dreamed about as a kid or anything else. And I got this accidental opportunity to get exposed to something I love. I think if I wasn't an actor, the only difference would be I'd be an unemployed actor. Because I really love it. I love the work. I love the craft. Not so crazy about some of the fame things, but I can live with that. And I talk about that in the book quite a bit.
You do talk about that in the book, which scared me a little bit coming here because you had a press a little bit that was not kind. Not me, but...
In terms of the press, the tabloids were not kind. And they'd make stuff up, and I was shocked at that. How can they do that? They make stuff up on a whole cloth.
We won't give it away, but when you read the book, he gets back at the tabloids.
Yes, I do.
I have one final question because we're just about out of time. And near the end of your book, you write this: "When I look down the road, I can't see the end. So what do you see?"
Work, I hope. Look, it's really possible to be doing good work in this business. And the phone stops ringing. And that happens to some of the best actors I know. So I don't know what's out there, but I like that. And that, like I said, the original title of my book fits very well. Don't know where I'm going, but there's no use being late. I want to work. And my hope is people want me to work.
And I know there are 10 more episodes of Blue Bloods, but I still feel that's open-ended. You never know. You never know.
Yes, you never know. I'm waiting for CBS to come to their senses. It was very nice in Variety. We were just, the 14th season of Blue Bloods has ended. They had a 10-show season because of the strike, and I'm proud to say my show, Blue Bloods, is in the top 10 of 100 top broadcast television shows.
But take away some of the sports that were just
well, we're
there.
number 6. Yeah. Who's counting? But there were the 6th highest rated program on all of broadcast television. So I don't know, maybe CBS ought to read Variety.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Tom Selleck.